Welcome back to the activation phase. We have a super special episode full of hype and enthusiasm about the Burgundians. I'm JP and joined by my trusty co-host, Tim.
Hello.
All right, I think we got some feedback. Hype levels were low with the Castilians. I think it's fair to say that we are more hyped about the Burgundians.
Heck yeah, I think they're incredible. Yeah, definitely.
Dare we say OP?
Yes. Yes. That's an early yes. I think probably the best faction in Chivalry. I mean, that doesn't say a lot. There's a lot of very good factions, but I think they're insane. So we'll talk about why here in a second. You want to start us off with the equipment options?
Yeah, sure. So let's before we dive into the details and everything else, the Burgundians have essentially two options in terms of sub-factions. So you either have the kind of the feudal and retinue companies of the Burgundians, which are earlier, and then you have the Burgundian Company d'Ordonnance, and with slight differences in the equipment options. But generally, I think we've seen both in tournaments. Before we dive into the equipment options, Tim, do you want to maybe give a brief overview of the playstyle of the faction? That way people have a general idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah, okay. So they're the perfect example of like a mixed lance. Even one of their abilities is called that. They have some units that want to shoot and set up better melees, and then they have some units that want to melee to set up better shots. So they're like a big puzzle that you play while playing Saga to make sure that your shots buff your melees and your melees make your shots easier. I think that's basically the whole playstyle.
I think it's one of the more involved factions with lots of interactions between units and actions and everything else. So yeah. I think it's not like a simple faction to play, but I think it's with practice it can be incredibly powerful, and also I think very like fun for your opponents as well. There's a lot of things happening, movement, etc. It's not the same thing repeated over and over. So I think overall that's kind of like a winning combination for Saga factions. I feel, at least. I've played against them a few times, 2 or 3 times now, and I think they're just like a fun faction to play against. So, all right, let's dive in. So the first one is the feudal and retinue companies. They're your warlord and hearthguard. Both can be on foot with no special equipment, or on horse, but no barding. Then your warrior options are no special equipment with pevises or with horses. The pevises, as usual, are only maximum 1 unit. And then finally, the levies can either have bows or crossbows. You don't have any special rules regarding your warlord or anything like that, or special equipment or units. And then finally, your Burgundian Company d'Ordonnance units. You have a little bit more options. So essentially, you can do your warlord and hearthguard either on foot with no special equipment, mounted on horses without barding, or mounted on horses with barding. You finally have warrior options. So you have the standard warriors with no equipment option, with horses, with bows, or with crossbows, and then no levy option whatsoever. So this is more to represent the later, more professionalized armies of the Burgundian dukedom, whatever.
Duchy.
That's the one. So yes, that's basically it. But nice, rounded faction. I think people kind of know them. I don't know. I think they're cool. Generally, we see some very hardcore Burgundian players who have made Burgundy their lifestyle. But,
yeah, definitely.
I think that's very respectable, and I think I think it's definitely a cool thing. But like, I don't know, it's one. to be honest, I think one of the reasons it's also so interesting for people is it's just essentially a country which doesn't exist anymore in the middle of Europe. So I think that's also generally always interesting, at least in a historical perspective. Okay, moving on. Let us go to the battle board. I think that's probably the traditional way of doing these things.
Yeah.
Should
Give
I?
us the basic
Should
abilities.
I will, and this is actually really simple. So no special, no special activations. It's very basic as per usual. But yeah, that's nothing wrong with that. So let's move on to the battle board itself.
All right. The first advanced ability is called Employing the Axe, and it's a melee ability that takes 2 commons, as every single chivalry board has. And this one says, unit without ranged weapons. So they gain 3 attack dice and 3 defense dice, and gain 1 additional attack die and 1 additional defense die if the enemy unit was targeted by a shooting attack this turn. So the usual rate for, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's like 8 out of 12 or something for these 2 common melee abilities in chivalry is you gain 7 dice of some sort, and for this, the Employing the Axe actually gives you 8 when you shot your target or your melee enemy before you charge them, and 6 if you didn't shoot them before. So good value if you shot them, which is definitely something you want to be doing anyway. And then 8 dice for 2 commons is actually quite good. And the 4 defense dice can definitely be very good, especially on Hearthguard, where you won't get that many hits, and you can sometimes just get out of combat without taking any casualties just because you have 4 additional defense dice. So I think this ability is actually quite good, even though it takes 2 dice, and the Burgundians want to do a lot of stuff. So 2 dice might actually be very expensive on this board, but I think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's a good all-round ability, right? Like, there's no, like, sure, it's 2 dice, but okay, you're doing commons. I guess you are in the ordnance faction. You have maybe a little bit more warriors, so the commons are a little bit at a premium. But I don't think it's just solid, right? Like, if you charge in a unit and you play this as the only ability, it's even that there's like, it's pretty solid. So I think it's good all around. But yeah, here we see the first kind of combination that you need some kind of shooting in your warband to make this even better.
Yes.
Okay, so the next one I think is absolutely phenomenal. So it's called Remounts. This is a activation. It's played with either a common or a rare. So activate a unit for a move of L, up to 2 units if you use a rare. So there's no limitation whatsoever. You can pop up your crossbow warriors or levies to put them in a nice juicy position. There's a you can either move your barded units if you want. So yeah, this is just such an incredible value for basically anything. I think this is an autoplay. Whether or not you use the rare on this is debatable in certain situations, but there's no reason not to just do this anyway. Like, you're going to activate your warriors to move anyway with a common, so why not put it on here and just get that sweet L move? So
it's
I think
so
this is
good.
Absolutely phenomenal. It really catches your opponent off guard, because you're like, oh, your levy are totally out of range. You're not going to move them for like three turns to get like 6 shot off, and then you just pop this and you're suddenly a gigantic threat. So I think all around, one of such a simple ability but incredibly powerful. Also great for moving levy.
I agree. Great ability. Hell yeah.
So barding, no issues. The only downside is obviously this is a move, not a charge, but who cares?
Yeah, true. All right, next up is coordination, and probably the signature for the Burgundians, even though we just talked about remounts, and in my opinion, the best ability in the book, in the whole book of Age of Chivalry. And it's an activation ability that takes a common and an uncommon, and it says activate a unit to shoot. During the next melee, this turn, involving the shooting attack's target, it counts as unarmed. So what does unarmed mean? So you can't close ranks, and your opponent or the opponent of the unarmed unit gets +1 to their save. So they save on force and melee if they have no other buffs. So this is so good because you basically closed ranks, and we know how good closing ranks is because you're saving on force even though you still have all your attacks. This also activates the unit to shoot. So considering that you mostly will shoot levies, I think, or it doesn't matter. You want to activate your warriors or your levies to shoot. So that's already an activation in there. So you basically just pay common or an uncommon for this insane effect. And the whole unarmed thing is also super important for some combinations for other boards, because some boards say if your unit is equipped with pikes or something, then you can do this, and then suddenly they can't because they are not equipped with pikes anymore. They're unarmed. And that's just I don't think I can put into words how good that is. So I love this ability. I think it's super good, forcing your opponent to stay open, not closing ranks, while getting a buff to your defense dice just feels incredible. And so pikes, for example, because there's a lot of pikes walking around, right? Pikes, for example, don't get their +1 buff to while attacking horses anymore because they're not pikes. And so the heavy weapons lose their heavy weapon rule and everything. I mean, they get their armor back up, but doesn't matter. So coordination, great. What do you think about coordination, JP?
Yes. I'd actually didn't pick up on the pike part of that as well, because that's a serious issue. I'm playing so far. I've really focused on playing the Flemish, and that, like, charging cavalry into the Flemish is a bad time. But this really gets around it as well. So I think this this makes it even better. Sure, this is the second 2 dice ability we've seen so far. And generally we're not fans of 2 dice abilities, but here you get the shooting and you get the gigantic debuff, right? So this is pretty sweet. So I like it. Incredibly versatile, and I think you've also this is good.
Yes.
I think we might have played it incorrectly then, because I think I'd have to check with Alberto, because he was playing Burgundians, and I'm pretty sure he charged my pikes. I can't remember if he played coordination, and I absolutely wiped his Hearthguard with my pike. So I need to check in that if we play that correctly, but because that was quite pivotal. Anyway, the next one.
He definitely knew what he was doing when he played against me. So when he shot my pikes, he definitely took the +1 off. So. Or he said, I don't count as pikes anymore. So he knew. So I think he probably knew. He didn't use it on you.
Probably because he was just thinking they were levy. Anyway, Burgundy, Saint Andrew, ! Actually, this one has first saga ability with 2 exclamation marks in it, which is impressive.
Whoa.
So, I know, for those keeping track, this is a melee ability for heroes or Hearthguards, using a common plus a rare, so very costly. But anyway, add 2 automatic hits you inflict and cancel 2 hits taken by your unit during this melee. Auto hits always good, especially against the heavily armored people. I think here one obvious thing is the auto hits completely bypass all of the limits to the attack dice, etc. So even your 1 unit of Hearthguard or your sole remaining Hearthguard is going to do some serious damage if you want to wipe them for master points, for example.
And he's probably going to live.
And he probably will after this as well. So I think this is just really nice. I mean, it is relatively expensive in a board that is already has a record number of 2 dice abilities on it anyway. But yeah, I mean, this makes your Warlord or your Hearthguard just so solid, especially if they have the Barding on top of it. It's just, I think it's good, but 2 dice and you need the rare. So you're not going to be able to pop this on the exact right moment that you always need it. But I think it's an overall solid thing. It's nice to also have support for your Hearthguard and your heroes on the board already, which really kind of gives you a nice little incentive also to branch out and have a nice balanced list. So I think overall it fits very nicely with this particular board.
Yeah, the rare on here and the common is just feels very expensive, and so I think this one's just very situational. If you have that soul Hearthguard that you want to do lots of damage with, or have them survive for like just he needs to survive to just keep generating Saga, I think then it's good. But basically 3 dice because it's a common and a rare is just it's very expensive. And in my 3-4 games against Burgundians, I think I only saw it played twice, because maybe it's not the heart of this battle board. So yeah. Right, next ability is called Crossfire. It takes a common, and it's a melee ability. And it says, at the end of the melee, activate a friendly unit to shoot. This activation generates no fatigue. So this, of course, you fight, and then you get to, with a common, you get to activate levies, for example, to shoot again with no fatigue. So pretty good. Shooting with no fatigue is just very nice, especially for a common. And then the important part is that this doesn't bypass anything related to crossbows. So if they shot already, they can't shoot again if they haven't moved. And the bow levies or bow warriors can just shoot again. So I think this is one of the reasons why you bring the bows and crossbows, because otherwise you could probably just go all crossbows. But because of Crossfire and your ability to just shoot and then shoot again, unless you have like an insane number of shooting units where you can always utilize this, I think if you only bring like 2, then 1 unit of crossbows and 1 unit of bows is good, just so you can use Crossfire, because a common for a shot with no fatigue is good value.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely a why wouldn't you activate Levy to shoot again with no fatigue for a common?
Nice.
This makes sense to me. All right.
Yeah.
The next one is called Mixed Lance. It's an uncommon dice required for this activation. It activate a unit to shoot, then activate unit to charge. So first of all, multiple activations. We like this. You're already going to be taking a what's it called? A shooting unit anyway, as we have discussed, and on top of that, this mixes really nicely with the previous ability we're talking about with Crossfire as well, to ensure that your levy do not get fatigue after shooting for a second time. So all in all, I think this is insane value for what you get. So like it's I mean, we were talking about how dice hungry the board is with the 2 activate the 2 dice abilities on here. This kind of helps you manage that a little bit. So I think this is pretty solid. So I think this was played quite often against me as well. So I think this, like, why wouldn't you play this? It's just insane value. You can activate your warriors with the uncommon and your levy with the single dice. So why wouldn't you do this? Okay,
I
like it.
And I think these kinds of abilities are also just so good, even better than they look, because you can just keep your opponent guessing. Because when you put down abilities onto your warriors or onto your Hearthguard, then yes, your opponent can check. Okay, what can my opponent do, and what what kind of activations are still coming. And then with something like this, they have no idea. You can even charge your levy in that just shot. Shoot your levy and then charge them in. This doesn't say it doesn't work. So I think the mixed lance is just makes the whole board work so well. It's so nice.
There's also no stipulation in terms of, you have to charge your unit within short of your shooting unit or something like that.
Yeah,
So it's
nothing.
It's wherever on the board you want to do something, you're gonna do it. Most turns you're gonna be shooting anyway, and you're gonna be charging anyway. So might as well combine these two in a single ability with no limitation. So I'm kind of a little bit bitter because like the Flemish, like you can only move if your unit is within of the shooting unit or something like that.
Yeah.
And then and here it's like, no, just wherever you want, you can do whatever you want. So all good. So yes, little bitter. Never mind.
Understand. Next up is Ravage and Pillage, and it's an activation that takes a rare. It says activate a unit for a charge, regenerates no fatigue. It gets 2 bonus attack dice if the enemy unit was the target of a shooting attack during this turn. So it kind of plays like the Norman. Is it Pursuit or something? The rare that you can charge and get 3 bonus attack dice. And we know that charging with no fatigue is just very powerful because you can hit targets hard that you were not supposed to hit. And so the 2 bonus attack dice, also nice. I mean, if you do it with your Warlord, it's only 1 attack die. But Ravage and Pillage, simple ability, fatigue-free charge, and bonus attack dice. I think it's pretty good. I think it's a good place for a rare.
So next one is Guard Yourselves. It's a melee or shooting reaction using a common or an uncommon. Your unit gains the Resilience 1 special rule for the rest of the melee or shooting attack, or Resilience 2 if they're Hearthguards. Yes. I mean, the only downside here is that there's not a ton of kind of like fatigue removal at the moment so far on this board. However, Barding plus Resilience 2 is pretty sweet, and definitely something that's kind of worthwhile, especially combined with some of the other defensive abilities you have on here, like employing the axe or something like that. You're really not going to kill much Hearthguard. I think also, single dice ability, so it's not too much of an issue to get it off. And yeah, you're really not going to kill much of a Hearthguard unit with all of these things, especially with all of the other debuffs, like the being able to make people unarmed and fatigue-free charges, stuff like that. So this is just kind of like a very it just makes them really, really hard to kill. But I don't know. It's in the end, you could just be completely fatigued and exhausted at the end of it if you have a little bit of bad luck. But it's not something I would just play on a Hearthguard unit with no other supporting abilities on it.
Yeah, I think for this one, it's just you have to make sure that it doesn't end up being like a double-edged sword, right? You don't want to completely exhaust your unit, but playing this in a melee with your Hearthguard to just cancel 2 hits and take basically 1 additional fatigue at the end of the melee, and just taking this ability as if it said cancel 2 casualties you take and take an additional fatigue. I think then it's suddenly just very good, because you don't want to end up exhausted, because then you're just super dead and don't do a lot of damage. But just 1 fatigue for 2 attacks for 2 casualties, so that's after rolling to save, just feels very good. And I think this is super good in melee on Hearthguard, and then good for the rest of your warband. But there's maybe a bit more situational, because you don't really want your warband to get fatigue, because as you said, there isn't really anything to take the fatigue off other than resting, and you can only rest once per turn. So kind of have to watch out for that one.
Yeah, and there's also obviously can be used as a shooting reaction as well. I mean, generally, if you're barded, it's okay. Um, you're not super vulnerable to shooting, except for
Yeah.
crossbows. But it is an option. But I think you have enough other ways of getting around that, like for example with the remounts or something like that, that you really don't need to put your barded Hearthguard in a position where they're going to get shot. Same thing with your either your mounted warriors or anything else like that, because you have enough movement to make sure that you really don't need to be putting yourself out there like that and soaking up fatigue, especially if you put them out wanting to charge, you get fatigue. They're pretty much useless anyway
Yes.
so yeah, I think this one is limited. If you really want to survive your Hearthguard, sure, but it's as usual, double-edged sword, like you said.
Yes. All right. Next up is pretty one edge, pretty pointy in your opponent's direction. It's Spring the Snare. It's an activation reaction that takes an uncommon. And it says trigger this ability when an enemy unit activates for a move or a charge before the activation is resolved. Activate a unit to shoot at the activated enemy unit. So basically, before they get to move in, you just get to shoot one more time. And this is such a good reason to bring the crossbows, because that hurts a lot, even if you get like 3-4 shots off. And if you're going into a foot, an army on that's on foot, and it's usually going to be the full 6 shots because they have to get in range, and then your guys are probably going to be fully in range. And so this is, I mean, quote unquote, just fatigue-free shot. And it's in your opponent's turn, so it gets around the crossbow problem. So I think this one's so good. It's such a good ability, and your opponent kind of has to invest some defense into not dying on the way in, which feels crazy good, because then they're not investing that into the actual fight that they're going in. So I think Spring the Snare is just super good.
Yeah, me too. It's just so, like, you can't even. I think having this on the board just makes you think multiple times before charging in your mounted warriors or something like that. Just they will get absolutely decimated by your crossbows, and if you're just kind of like moving them across in your turn, minding their own business, like, you really have to watch out where you're placing them, even if that's not like the final destination or something. So I think it's such a good board control, and like what you said, crossbows with this, absolutely sick. And it just makes them just, yeah, why wouldn't you take them with crossbows? Anyway, okay, we like this. So the next one is again an activation reaction. So it's called Misfortune. It's also an uncommon. Trigger this ability when an enemy unit ends a charge or shoot activation within M of your warlord. It immediately takes a fatigue. To be honest, I have not seen this one being played.
Me neither.
I mean, so theoretically, yes, it's interesting, and it's also kind of keeps your warlord safe, because you're immediately just using that fatigue if they charge in for like bringing yourself to armor 6. So
yeah, that doesn't work.
Good.
That doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's the problem with this ability, because it says trigger this ability when an enemy unit ends a charge activation within medium of your warlord. Oh, yeah. And the charge activation ends after the melee. So it's just bad timing.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. If they charge your Hearthguard unit that's bodyguarding your warlord, then you and they charge you again. All right, that's a little bit too specific. So I think it's okay. It probably gets used every once in a while, but yeah, I think you should put a post-it.
Used it.
Yeah, if you put a post-it note over this particular one and don't use it, you're not gonna. Most people will not notice. But anyway, I think that's the maybe a little bit. Maybe that's the only one that we're not super impressed by. But the rest is
the rest is so good. Yeah.
And I think we have a little bit of everything here, right? We have your activation reactions with shooting. We have the multiple activations with the remounts on a rare. Also the mixed lands. And then we have just auto hits, auto cancellations, putting fatigue-free moves.
Fatigue-free shot, fatigue-free
Yeah.
charge.
So I think this is a good one. Let me put it that way.
Yes.
All right. So I think we're enthusiastic enough about this. Let's move on to the list building phase of this particular faction. Let's the feudal one. So that's as a reminder, that's the ones without barding and with levy options as well. So how would you, first of all, which one do you think is actually kind of overall in a competitive sense better?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. I don't know because the melee warriors just end up being very effective, but also very squishy because then they're just you don't put anything out there onto the battlefield that can't fight. So there's only stuff that can actually also deliver the punch, which makes the so much easier to play the faction because you don't have to protect weak levies because you can just you kind of have to start protecting weak warriors. But in terms of shooting dice efficiency, the levies are just so much better. And so I honestly don't know which one's better. I think the barding on the horses is also really good because you can move them large. And so I don't know. I think maybe the levies have a slight edge just because putting so many levy units down, and most factions actually in chivalry, in my experience, struggle with killing levies because they don't have enough attack dice to actually take out all the levies. And so maybe the levy one is slightly better. So that's the feudal one, right? And
yeah, that's the feudal one.
But
so you miss out on barding.
Sure. Yeah, I think that is okay because the levies might just be a bit better.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the tension, right? Like either you want your buffed Hearthguard with the barding, or you want your much more efficient levies on the shooting and the shooting activation reaction type stuff. So I think that's the eternal struggle here for and kind of like the internal balance for this board as well. So in the I'm just having a look at the list from the Benelux Grand Melee, and we had a little bit of a mix of feudal and actually we only had feudal Burgundians in this particular list. So seems like the feudal is winning out on pure numbers at the moment, and we did not have a single ordnance Compagnie d'Ordonnance version of it. So I guess the people have spoken. People find the levy shooting more important for this particular board. However, I don't know. I can definitely see a case for either one of these. Maybe I can go quickly through the list that people took for the feudal ordinance to give people an idea of what people are taking generally. So our number 3 place player was doing the feudal Burgundians with 2 points of Hearthguard, 0 warriors, 2.5 levy, and then 1.5 points of mercenaries, so the Lombard Lancers, and then the cannon. So makes sense. Finally, we had another Burgundian player, 1.5 points of Hearthguard, 1 point of warriors, 2 points of levy, 4 men-at-arms, and then a cannon. So the 1.5 points of mercenaries is making seems to be the trend here. And then finally, the last one was 1.5 points of Hearthguard, 2 points of warriors, 2.5 points of levy, and then no mercenaries. However, this was the first time this person was playing the Burgundian, so probably not like the
industry standard.
Industry standard. So take that one with a grain of salt. I think cannon makes sense. Like you can activate them relatively easily. You can do a lot with fatigue anyway. So I think this one that makes sense, and it's so flexible. Finally, the levies, having 2.5 points of levies also makes sense. Or 2 points of levies. There's so much shooting. I think that's pretty solid. Probably the 2.5 points of levies maybe gets substituted for the cannon, something like that. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. And I think the substitution for foreign men-at-arms instead of warriors, that makes more sense for me as well. You also get much more, you get like the reasonable attacks and much more flexibility. So I think all in all, I see where this is going. We have a Flojo contribution here. Mr. Burgundy himself taking the ordnance version. He is very into his Burgundy, so you might just be. I'm not sure if he's taking this because it's the better option,
Is
or
it
that
fluffy or is it good?
this is not for me to judge. But
All
he
right,
might
bring
just
it.
like the So he has 2.5 points of Hearthguard split into 5/5 or 6/4. 3 points of Warriors, 10-man normal warriors on foot, 7 bow, 7 crossbow, and a cannon. And then obviously the warrior composition and equipment of the Hearthguard changes depending on the enemy. And then he mostly takes barding on his warlord to keep him nice and safe. So I think all of these are essentially what you want is Hearthguard, and then bows and crossbows, and then that's it. So if you, I guess, even if you paint up Hearthguard, and then whether or not the only difference here is if you paint up 8 crossbows or 12 crossbows, or 8 bow guys and 12 bow guys. That's about it. So I think it's pretty flexible in terms of being able to switch between the two types of sub factions as well to figure out where you want to bring this particular sub faction.
Yeah, I think I have one more list to contribute, and there was a small-ish German tournament, I think 12 or 14. No, it was 12. So, and it was held online, and so people could just experiment a bit over the course of 5 weeks, so 5 games. And the Burgundian player ended up winning, and their list was they played 5 Hearthguard, and then 4 units of 9 levies, 2 with crossbows, 2 with bows, and half a point of a cannon. And I think that should be 2.5 plus 3.5. Yeah, exactly. So no warriors, and that was quite effective because there was basically shooting everywhere on the board. Nowhere you could go that kind of felt like you're not springing the snare, or nowhere you could go to dodge coordination. And then again, if one unit of levies, so the unit of levies always walked around together, and it was super hard to wipe them because 9 levies you usually don't wipe if you don't have anything to put fatigue on first. And he's not usually putting on fatigue on himself because you can shoot in my turn or activate them fatigue free to shoot. And so, you can take out 1 unit of levies, but then you're right next to a full unit of levies that can just shoot you next turn. And so it was basically split up into a unit of 5 Hearthguard and 2 units of 9 levies together, and then on the other side of the board, the same thing. And the cannon somewhere in the corner, with the warlord supporting it in the beginning and then running to fight. So that seemed really, really effective because there was no real like counterplay. Yeah, take out a unit, you take the Saga die, but it generates a lot of Saga die anyway, this army. And so it doesn't really matter. So that felt quite brutal, honestly.
Sounds good. All right. I think we've given a simple overview of what you can do. And to give a rating.
Yeah.
All right.
It's probably for me, I think it's 4.5 out of 5. And the only thing missing for the whole puzzle is fatigue removal. Then it would be a 5 out of 5.
Then it would be truly OP. I think so too. I think this is going to be a popular one, along with the French, is what I suspect. So I think French, Swiss, Burgundians is my that's my top 3 for this age at the moment.
All right, fair enough. We'll see how that holds up.
We'll see. We'll see. People listening 2 years from now, it's completely different. But anyway, overall, super pumped. We just had tournaments. Do you want to say something about our Benelux Grand Melee, which you did okay-ish in?
Yeah, it was a thanks for organizing, JP. Very, very well organized tournament in the theater. I always loved that location. I think the scenarios because they were kind of set in the beginning. You could just look at what they were going to be and like when you were going to play them and even in which order. I ended up bringing Scots because I thought it was super funny because you put those scenarios, and I think I logged in with Scots like 5 months ago whenever you put the tournament up. And when I looked at the scenarios, I thought, yeah, Scots are just the best for this because you need lots of warriors, and the Scots can bring lots of warriors. I mean, so can the Swiss, but anyway, I think the scenarios were really good with the small. There was the Sacred Ground one, which I think is a great scenario idea. It's just super, super keyed towards bringing warriors because it's conquer points, and conquer points are just shit right now. I think they're not balanced. I don't think they work at all. And so that's a bit unfortunate that they only use conquer points. But I think the whole scenario idea is super nice. And I'm happy to kind of work on it. Maybe someone has an idea to fix conquer points or something. But yeah, good tournament. Really enjoyed that. I think it was 16 players, so a good number of players, right? Or is it?
Yeah, we had a few. Yeah, we had a few drops last minute, so I did have to step in, but that's okay. Then I was kind of running around and doing the organizing. Thanks for helping me with after crushing your opponents on turn 3. So no, it was a fun time. I think also I left with the same idea with the scenarios as well. I was playing first of all, I wasn't expecting to play, so I'd taken the Flemish anyway. But yeah, like the levy is just such an uphill battle trying to do anything with conquest points. I think they're also, which I don't think is a bad idea. I mean, the levy is just a massive blob of people. So I think that's okay, but it's I think it's more of an issue with the Flemish who want to be really bunched up, and if I have to split my army into 2, it becomes really easy to pick off as units. You lose emboldened, that kind of stuff. But I didn't really pick the scenarios. I just in terms of assuming I was playing with my Flemish, obviously, I picked them more in terms of not wanting people to kind of park somewhere. So we did advance, we did desacralization, and we did sacred ground. So lots of movement, lots of kind of splitting up your army. So I think that's kind of the more the philosophy behind it.
I think that was really good. I mean, especially the first two. No, the first two. So where you weren't, the desacralization is actually quite nice, much better than the first version of it. I forgot what it's called, desecrate or something.
Desecration.
Yeah, desecration. And the first scenario that we played, where you need to advance. I think advance is one of the best scenarios in Saga right now. Super good.
Yeah, I think so as well. One thing I do want to kind of have it work on in the background a little bit is also just to speed up the scenarios, because at the moment we have so many different packs of scenarios, and it's not entirely clear like which one. You have like desacralization, desecration, probably some other ones with slightly different versions, and I get the feeling that most people are spending about half an hour to 45 minutes just to get turn 1, basically.
Yeah.
So I think that's one improvement which I kind of hope it gets picked up by the community, how to simplify it, especially kind of in tournament play. I don't like the idea of having like set tables in terms of terrain placement. I think that's an abomination.
Yes.
But I do, and like I like the universal method as a concept. I think that's really good. It's it really differentiates like okay players from absolutely brilliant players. Also in terms of knowing their warband, etc. So I think that is like a key part of it. The only thing is something needs to be speed up in terms of having more standardized deployment, more standardized scoring, more standardized like objectives or something like that. So I think somewhere we need to find a balance in terms of having an enjoyable scenario that's testing different things, so that no single shooting cavalry or levy spam army is like auto win. and balancing that with like just the speed of being able to play the scenarios and the simplicity. Ideally, you would have an entire scenario described within like one paragraph instead of one A4 paper. I think that would speed things up.
I think you're actually the whole thing about standardization is super easy if you just accept that the universal method of deploying terrain is by far the best. So you can skip everything related to that unless it's something like Sacred Ground where there needs to be like 2 extra lines of text where the 2 specific terrain pieces need to be, and then for deployment, it should just always be universal deployment method. So you also don't need to describe that, which is just player 1 puts down and universal deployment method, and then maybe range medium or range large. So that's from your table edge, and you put player 1 puts half their warband down into the range, and then player 2 puts their full warband down, and then player 1 the rest. I think there's no benefit to alternating. It never feels like, oh yeah, that just won me or lost me the game, or just kind of even influenced what's happening here. And so I think you're right on. Standardization for the just always use the universal deployment for terrain and then universal deployment for troops. I don't see a reason why not.
Right. I think we'll work on this in the background, but I'm glad you had fun. Did you mention that you won this particular tournament?
Yeah, it was I think my closest match was actually the first one. It was because advanced kind of actually is challenging for the Scots because they're not super fast, and so I ended up winning and had a super close game. And then the last one for basically the win or not was against Burgundians, but the Scots can actually roll a ton of attack dice, and so they can take out these big units of levies because of fighting again. So I forgot what it's called, hammer down the nail or something. I don't remember where you just fight again. And the other ability that just gives a unit of Hearthguard like 5 attack dice, and then 2 more attack dice, and then 3 more attack dice. And all these attack dice are one of the make Scots one of the sole factions that can actually take out levies. And so the Burgundians didn't expect that, I guess, that the Hearthguard are just going to come in and wipe 1 unit of levies per turn. And so that was crazy, and ended up being ended up winning. Yeah, so really cool.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Let's round off this episode. Thank you for listening. Thanks, Tim, for joining me today, and speak to you guys soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stop the recording.